The discovery. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Consortium hummed with anxious energy as representatives from 12 species gathered in emergency session. High Counselor Zexith, a towering viridian with iridescent scales that rippled with each movement, gestured toward the massive hologram that dominated the center of the chamber. This derelict vessel was discovered at the edge of the Threshold Nebula by one of our patrol ships, Zexith announced, his voice resonating through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Initial scans suggest it has been adrift for at least 2,000 cycles. A hologram rotated slowly, revealing a massive vessel unlike anything the assembled representatives had seen before. Its hull was pitted and scarred from countless impacts, with visible patches and repairs spanning its entire length. Crude by modern standards, the ship nonetheless projected an aura of menace with its angular design and what appeared to be primitive weapon emplacements dotting its surface. Ambassador Nilora of the Quoth Collective adjusted her atmospheric filters as she studied the image. With respect, High Counselor, why has this piece of space debris warranted an emergency session? Our technicians identify no immediate threat. Her gelatinous form pulsed with skepticism. Because, Zexith replied, his scales shifting to a deep crimson, it appears to have traversed the Void Gate. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. The Void Gate, a region of space where conventional physics collapsed, where no vessel, no matter how advanced, had ever successfully navigated through. Dozens of exploration missions had been lost attempting to penetrate its mysteries over the millennia. Science Director Krell of the mechanoid Ixalan stepped forward, his synthetic body whirring softly. Impossible. Our most advanced computational models prove conclusively that organic life could not survive transit through the Void Gate. The radiation alone would. And yet, interrupted Zexith, spectral analysis of the hull shows exposure patterns consistent with Void Gate radiation. Moreover, the trajectory calculations are undeniable. The hologram shifted to display a flight path tracking backward from the vessel's current position, through the swirling chaos of the Void Gate and beyond, to the empty sector that had remained unexplored and unreachable for as long as the Consortium had existed. Commander Tharsis of the Consortium Defense Force cleared her throat, the sound like grinding stones. Whatever this vessel is, its construction is primitive. No quantum drives, no neural interfaces, not even basic gravitic manipulation technology. By all appearances, it relied on combustion propulsion and rotational gravity. Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. Combustion propulsion. Ambassador Nilora's form rippled with amusement. How would such a primitive craft survive the gravitational stresses of the Void Gate? It must be a natural phenomenon, perhaps an asteroid with unusual mineral composition that merely resembles an artificial construct. Zexith's scales shifted to a deep blue. I assure you, Ambassador, it is artificial. And there's more. He nodded to an aide who adjusted the hologram. We've detected faint power signatures. After thousands of cycles adrift, something aboard still functions. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. I propose a research expedition, announced Director Krell. The Ixalan volunteer to lead the investigation. This vessel, regardless of its origins, represents a technological anomaly that must be studied. After hours of debate, a joint expedition was authorized. The research vessel Boundless Inquiry departed 3 days later with a crew representing 5 species, each selected for their expertise in xenorchaeology, ancient technologies, and potential first contact protocols. Though most considered that last specialty unnecessary, whatever intelligence had built the derelict was almost certainly long extinct. Approaching final docking position, announced Navigator Vex, his 4 hands dancing across the control interface of the Boundless Inquiry. The slender Ashanti's skin glowed with faint bioluminescence, a sign of his concentration as he maneuvered their vessel alongside the massive derelict. Research Director Mela observed from the command platform, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light from nearby consoles. Maintain distance until the scan is complete, she ordered, caution evident in her harmonic voice. Though she led the expedition, Mela couldn't shake a growing unease as they approached the ancient vessel. Security Chief Dorn snorted, the sound amplified by his environmental suit. The massive Ergorian checked his weapon systems for the third time. "You worry too much, Director. This Hulk is dead as the civilizations of the fourth expansion." "And yet," replied technical specialist Jen, her tentacles manipulating multiple interfaces simultaneously, "I'm detecting organized electron flow. Extremely faint, but definitely artificial. Something aboard is still drawing power." Dorn's ridged brow furrowed. "After thousands of cycles? Impossible." "Clearly not impossible," remarked Sinolinguist Talax, the Vexeran's feathers rustling with excitement. "Merely improbable. Which makes our discovery all the more fascinating." The final scans revealed no immediate dangers, though merely 20% of the vessel remained shielded from their sensors by unknown materials. After establishing a secure airlock connection, the research team prepared to board. "Remember," instructed Mela as they gathered at the airlock, "we observe only. Touch nothing without prior authorization. This vessel has survived the Void Gate and thousands of cycles in deep space. It may contain technologies or defensive systems we cannot anticipate." The team of 5 stepped through the airlock and into history. The corridors stretched before them, illuminated only by their portable lights. Ancient metal groaned around them as the derelict adjusted to their presence. The air, though thin, was breathable, another impossibility that added to the growing mystery. "These markings," Talax observed, running a scanner over symbols etched into a bulkhead. "They appear to be some form of logographic writing system. Primitive but consistent." The Vexeran recorded everything, his natural curiosity overcoming any apprehension. Jen examined a nearby panel. "This appears to be a manual control system. No neural interfaces, no photonic circuits. Just mechanical switches and basic electronic pathways. How could such a primitive vessel navigate space, let alone the Void Gate?" Dorn remained alert, his massive frame positioned protectively near the more absorbed researchers. Perhaps it didn't. Perhaps it was carried through by some natural phenomenon. "That doesn't explain the power signatures," Jen countered, her tentacles probing delicately at what appeared to be an access panel. "There's an organized system here, one that has remained functional for millennia. That suggests intentional design, not accident." As they moved deeper into the vessel, the corridors widened into what appeared to be a central hub. Darkened screens lined the walls, and at the center stood a raised platform surrounding a chair-like structure, clearly designed for a bipedal species. "This must be the command center," Mela hypothesized, her crystalline form reflecting their lights in dancing patterns across the ancient metal walls. "Though the control interfaces are surprisingly simplistic." Jen approached one of the darkened screens, her scanning equipment detecting minute power fluctuations. "There's still energy in these systems, just at extremely low levels. It's as if the ship entered some kind of hibernation mode rather than powering down completely." "Can you access any information?" Mela inquired, moving to join the technical specialist. "I can try to introduce a compatible power source to boost the existing systems, but..." The deck beneath them suddenly vibrated, and distant mechanical sounds echoed through the vessel's structure. Lights flickered weakly along the corridor they had traversed. "What did you do?" Dorn demanded, weapon raised. "Nothing," Jen protested, her tentacles recoiling from the panel. "I hadn't even begun the power transfer." Talax's scanner beeped urgently. "Energy signatures are increasing throughout the vessel. It appears our presence has triggered some form of automated response." The screens around them flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow throughout the command center. Symbols scrolled across their surfaces, the same logographic writing system they had observed in the corridors. "It's counting," Talax whispered, his feathers standing on end as he struggled to interpret the patterns. "I believe these are diagnostic sequences." A mechanical voice suddenly filled the chamber, speaking in an unknown language. The sound was harsh, consonant-heavy, unlike any language known to the consortium. Telex frantically adjusted his translation matrix. It's repeating the same phrase. I can't establish meaning yet, but the pattern suggests a query or command. Mela made a decision. Jen, see if you can access the ship's records. We need to know where this vessel came from and who built it. Dorn, secure our exit path. Telex, continue working on translation. Vex, assist where needed. As Jen cautiously interfaced her equipment with the ancient systems, more lights activated throughout the command center. A three-dimensional projection suddenly materialized above the central platform. A star map, but showing configurations unlike any in the consortium's charts. These stars, Vex whispered, his bioluminescence pulsing with excitement. They're from beyond the Void Gate. This is a map of uncharted space. The mechanical voice spoke again, this time accompanied by a new symbol appearing on all screens simultaneously. The symbol rotated slowly, revealing what appeared to be a circular emblem containing a stylized representation of a bipedal figure. I think I've accessed some kind of historical record, Jen announced, her tentacles working feverishly, converting visual data now. A new hologram formed, showing bipedal beings moving about on what appeared to be the very deck where they now stood. The beings were clothed in fitted garments with similar emblems to the one displayed on the screens. They moved with purpose, operating the primitive controls with practiced efficiency. They're so similar in form to the Ashanti, Vex observed, though clearly a distinct species. Accessing designation data, Jen reported, cross-referencing with all known historical records. The central screen flickered, then displayed a sequence of symbols that Talax hurriedly scanned. I have partial translation, he announced, voice trembling with discovery. The vessel designation translates approximately to unconquerable. And these beings? He paused, double-checking his translation matrix. Well, prompted Mela. They call themselves humans. And according to these timestamps, this recording was made over 9,000 cycles ago. A stunned silence fell over the research team. 9,000 cycles, before the formation of the consortium, before even the first contact era, when most of their civilizations were still in their technological infancy. There's more, Jen added, her voice subdued with awe. This vessel, it was a warship, and according to these records, it was not alone. It was part of a fleet, a human fleet. Impossible, Dorn growled. No spacefaring civilization existed 9,000 cycles ago, especially not one capable of building fleets. And yet, Mela gestured around them. We stand within the evidence. As if responding to her words, the ship's systems continued to activate, lights brightening throughout the command center. The mechanical voice spoke again, this time with what seemed like urgency. It's asking for command authorization. Telex translated, uncertainty in his voice. I think the ship believes we are its crew, or perhaps their descendants. Tell it we are researchers, Mela instructed. We mean no harm. Telex attempted to communicate using the patterns he had begun to decode, but the ship's response was immediate and unexpected. Security barriers slid into place, sealing the command center. What's happening? Dorn demanded, moving to position himself between the others and the nearest barrier. A new hologram appeared, a recording showing the same vessel engaged in what could only be described as combat with entities that resembled no known species. The human crew worked with coordinated precision, their primitive technology somehow holding its own against apparently superior forces. They were warriors, Vex whispered. But how could they have developed spacefaring technology so early? And how did they reach the Void Gate? More importantly, Mela added, what happened to them? Why have we never encountered these humans in our exploration? The final screen activated, displaying what appeared to be the ship's log. Telex worked feverishly to translate as the others watched in growing unease. It's a final message, he eventually reported, from the vessel's commander. They were pursued by an enemy. They attempted to escape through what we now call the Void Gate. They knew it was likely a one-way journey. And the humans themselves. Mela pressed. Telax's feathers drooped. The message indicates they entered some form of suspended animation. A last resort protocol called Operation Lazarus. The ship was programmed to maintain minimal life support and to await rescue. The implications stunned the research team into silence. Somewhere aboard this ancient vessel, preserved in technology that had functioned reliably for 9,000 cycles, the crew might still exist. Director, Jen broke the silence, her tentacles trembling. I've located the life support chamber. It's in the shielded section we couldn't scan, and it's still active. Before Mela could respond, the ship's systems surged with renewed energy. Screens flashed with urgent symbols, and the mechanical voice spoke again, this time in a different cadence. Warning, Telax translated, his voice barely above a whisper. The ship has detected approaching vessels. Non-human signatures identified. Defense protocols activating. The ancient warship, dismissed as primitive and irrelevant by the consortium's finest minds, began to awaken fully from its millennia-long slumber. And as it did, the research team realized that they had greatly underestimated both the vessel and the species that had built it. Humanity was about to re-enter galactic history. The awakening. Proximity alert. Multiple vessels approaching on intercept vectors. Navigator Vex's voice cracked with tension as his bioluminescence flashed erratically. The holographic display in the command center shifted to show 3 sleek predatory vessels cutting through space toward their position. Resorwing scout ships, Security Chief Dorn growled, his massive hands tightening on his weapon. Scavengers and pirates. They must have detected our approach and followed us here. Director Mela's crystalline structure pulsed with stress fractures. We need to return to the boundless inquiry immediately. Our research vessel has no combat capabilities. The airlock is sealed, Jen reported, her tentacles working frantically across the ancient control panels. This ship's defense systems have locked everything down. I can't override them. The human warship shuddered around them, ancient machinery grinding to life. Throughout the command center, dormant systems activated in sequence, status indicators changing from red to amber to green. Weapons systems, propulsion, tactical displays, all illuminating after millennia of dormancy. This is impossible, Dorn whispered, awed despite himself as the ancient vessel's true nature revealed itself. What they had dismissed as primitive technology was anything but. The design was different, alien, human, but undeniably advanced in ways they hadn't recognized. Telax continued translating the scrolling symbols. The ship has identified the approaching vessels as hostile based on weapons signatures and approach vectors. It's activating something called Combat Protocol 37. Can you communicate with it? Mela demanded. Tell it to stand down. We can't risk a conflict with the Resorings. I'm trying. Telax responded, his feathers rippling with concentration. But the language matrix is complex, and the ship's systems seem to be prioritizing defense over communication. The deck vibrated beneath them as ancient engines powered up, the ship's reactor core climbing from minimal output to combat readiness with alarming speed. Director, Jen said quietly, her voice filled with wonder, you need to see this. The technical specialist had accessed what appeared to be the ship's tactical systems. Unlike the crude interfaces they had initially observed, these displays showed a level of integration and sophistication that rivaled anything in the consortium's arsenal. The approaching Resorwing vessels were displayed in minute detail, their weapon systems, shield configurations, and structural vulnerabilities highlighted and analyzed. This isn't primitive technology, Jen continued. It's just different, designed with completely different principles than our own technology. But its effectiveness. She gestured to the displays where the ship was calculating firing solutions with terrifying precision. A new voice suddenly filled the command center, different from the ship's mechanical announcements. This voice was smooth, almost melodic, and speaking in the same unknown human language. It's an AI interface, Talax realized, frantically adjusting his translation matrix. Not like our synthetic consciousness networks, but something purpose-built for this vessel. I think it's asking for command authorization again. Tell it we are not its crew, Malin instructed, but that we face a common threat. Talax attempted to communicate using the patterns he had begun to decode. The AI responded with a series of rapid-fire questions. It's asking for identification, Talax reported, and assessing threat levels. Before they could respond further, the tactical display shifted. The lead resourcing vessel had launched what appeared to be boarding pods, small, agile craft designed to breach a ship's hull and deploy boarding parties. "They're coming for the ship," Dorn growled. "They must have realized what we found." The ancient warship responded before any of them could react. Point defense systems that had appeared dormant suddenly tracked with fluid precision, targeting the approaching boarding pods. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the hull, vaporizing 2 pods instantly. The third managed to evade, arsing toward an apparently vulnerable section of the hull. "Fascinating," Jen murmured, her tentacles curling with excitement. The targeting algorithms are adapting in real time, learning with each engagement. The main view screen suddenly activated, showing the resourcing vessels in high resolution. They had begun evasive maneuvers, clearly surprised by the derelict's unexpected defenses. "They're transmitting," Talax announced, "demands for our surrender. They claim this sector as their territory, and the derelict as their salvage by right of discovery." "That's absurd," Mela replied. "This vessel predates any territorial claims by thousands of cycles." The human warship seemed to agree. Its tactical systems locked onto the lead resourcing vessel, and energy readings spiked throughout the ship. What happened next left the research team stunned into silence. A weapon unlike anything in the consortium's arsenal activated. Not the energy beams or plasma projectors they were familiar with, but something that seemed to distort space itself around the target vessel. The resourcing scout ship was caught in what appeared to be a localized gravity well, its hull compressing under forces it was never designed to withstand. "By the eternal void," whispered Dorn, his warrior's assessment immediately recognizing the tactical implications. "That weapon bypasses shields entirely. It attacks the fabric of space around the target." The resourcing vessel crumpled like discarded tissue, its structure collapsing inward before the weapon released it. The mangled remains drifted lifelessly, all systems apparently destroyed. The remaining resourcing vessels immediately changed course, accelerating away from the human warship at maximum thrust. Their retreat was not pursuit, a mercy the research team suspected was due to the ancient vessel's limited power reserves rather than any programmed compassion. As the threat receded, the human warship systems began to power down to conservation levels again. The command center's lighting dimmed, and several auxiliary systems deactivated. The AI voice spoke once more, this time in a tone that seemed almost satisfied. "It's returning to standby mode," Talax translated, "but maintaining heightened alert status." The research team exchanged stunned glances. What they had witnessed defied everything they understood about technological development. A vessel built 9,000 cycles ago had just effortlessly defeated advanced modern ships. "Director," Jen said quietly, "I've been analyzing the ship's systems during the engagement. The weapons technology, the targeting systems, the tactical they're all built on principles our scientists have only theorized about. Some of these technologies we haven't even conceived of yet." "How is that possible?" Vex asked, his hands trembling slightly. "How could this species have developed such technology when they were supposedly pre-spacefaring?" "I have a theory," Talax offered, his translator still processing the ship's historical data. "According to these records, humans evolved on a high-gravity world with extreme environmental pressures. Their early history was marked by constant warfare, tribe against tribe, nation against nation. They developed technology not for exploration, but for survival and conquest. A species forged in conflict," Dorn rumbled, newfound respect in his voice. More than that, Talax continued, they approached problems differently than any known species, where the Ixalan pursue perfect logic, where the Viridians seek harmony with natural forces. Humans innovated through desperation. They developed technologies based on immediate needs rather than theoretical foundations, which explains the patchwork appearance of this vessel, Mela observed. It wasn't built according to a grand design but evolved through necessity and adaptation. Jen had moved to another console, her tentacles working with increased confidence as she learned the human interface patterns. I've accessed more historical records. This ship, the Unconquerable, was part of something called the Last Fleet. According to these logs, humanity faced extinction from a threat they called, the translation is difficult, the consuming darkness. The enemy we saw in the earlier hologram, Vex suggested. Yes, these records indicate that humanity fought a losing war against this enemy. The Last Fleet was a desperate gambit, ships sent in different directions through uncharted space, seeking either allies or new worlds where humanity might survive. And this ship chose the path through the Void Gate, Mela concluded, a journey they knew might be one way. Which brings us to perhaps the most important question, Dorn said, gesturing toward the sealed section of the ship. If the crew entered suspended animation as part of this Operation Lazarus, are they still alive after 9,000 cycles? A profound silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. A species thought never to have existed, preserved through technology that had functioned flawlessly for millennia, could be awakened into a galaxy that had evolved without them. We need to proceed carefully, Mela finally said. If humans are indeed preserved aboard this vessel, their awakening represents a first contact scenario unlike any in consortium history. And given what we've just witnessed of their technology, Dorn added grimly, potentially the most dangerous first contact in history. As if responding to their discussion, the ship's eye spoke again, this time projecting a schematic of the vessel with one section highlighted. It's directing us, Talax translated, his voice hushed with anticipation. To the suspension chambers. The corridor leading to the suspended animation chamber was different from the rest of the ship. While most sections showed evidence of battle damage and hasty repairs, this area had been meticulously maintained by automated systems. The walls gleamed with a polished metallic finish, and the lighting was softer, almost reverent. Life support systems are functioning at optimal levels, Jen reported, her scanners detecting complex energy patterns flowing through the walls. The ship has been conserving power for millennia, directing it primarily to this section. Security Chief Dorn took point, his massive frame moving with surprising grace as they approached the sealed doorway at the corridor's end. Still no response from the boundless inquiry, he reported. Communications remain blocked. Director Mela nodded, her crystalline form catching the light as she considered their options. We proceed as planned. First contact protocols remain in effect. Remember, these beings, these humans, come from a warlike culture by their own historical records. We must be prepared for any reaction. The doorway before them was unlike any other on the ship, massive, reinforced, and sealed with multiple redundant systems. The control panel beside it displayed a sequence of the now familiar human symbols. It's requesting authorization again, Talax translated, but also offering an emergency override option for medical personnel. Can you activate it? Mela asked. I believe so, the xenolinguist replied, carefully inputting a sequence based on patterns he had observed elsewhere on the ship. The massive door shuddered, then slowly began to retract into the wall. Cold vapor billowed out from the chamber beyond, momentarily obscuring their view. As it cleared, the research team found themselves facing a sight that would forever change their understanding of galactic history. Arranged in concentric circles were dozens of transparent chambers, each containing a humanoid figure suspended in a clear fluid. Monitoring equipment surrounded each chamber, displaying steady life signs and physiological data. 26 life forms, Jen reported, her scanners confirming what they were seeing. all in some form of metabolic stasis. And all, she hesitated, all showing stable neural activity. "They're dreaming," Vex whispered, awe evident in his voice. "After 9,000 cycles, they're still dreaming." Mela approached the nearest suspension chamber, studying the human within. The being appeared remarkably similar to the Ashanti in basic body plan, bipedal, with 2 upper limbs ending in manipulators with 5 digits each. But there the similarities ended. The human skin was unlike any species they knew, and the facial structure was completely foreign. According to these displays, Talak said, examining the monitors, "This is the vessel's commander. Someone named Alexander Vega. Can we revive them?" Vex asked, his scientific curiosity overwhelming caution. Dorn growled in warning. "That would be dangerously premature. We know nothing about these beings beyond what their own records tell us. Records that show them to be warriors with technology that can destroy modern vessels with ease. And yet," Mela countered, "if they are truly the last of their kind, do we have the right to leave them in suspension? To deny them the chance to live again?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems surged once more. The AI's voice filled the chamber, speaking with new urgency. The suspension pod's monitors began displaying new information, and the fluid within began to shift in color. "The revival sequence has been activated," Jen reported, her tentacles trembling with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "But I didn't initiate it." "The ship did," Talax realized, frantically trying to keep up with the rapidly changing displays. "The defense engagement must have triggered some kind of protocol. It's bringing the command crew out of suspension first." The fluid in the central pod began to drain, revealing more clearly the human commander within. As they watched, the being's chest began to rise and fall with increasing regularity. Eyelids fluttered and fingers twitched. "Director," Dorn said with quiet urgency, "we should withdraw to a safe distance. We have no idea how this being will react to our presence."